Hi, this is Julie Harland, and I'm your Math Gal. Please visit my website at yourmathgal.com where you could search for any of my videos organized by topic. We're going to do this percent mixture problem using one variable. It could also be solved using two variables, and I do that on a separate video. A chemist has a 21% salt solution and a 15% salt solution. How many quarts of each should be used to produce 60 quarts of a 19% salt solution? All right, so I am mixing two vats of this solution. One has a strength of 21%, so I'm going to call that my 21% solution. And I'm mixing that with a 15% strength solution. So I'm going to dump it all in this big vat, and I want it to have 19% strength. Now, if you're mixing a higher strength and a lower strength, you should get something somewhere in the middle, which is 19% is in between 15 and 21. Underneath here, I'm going to write the strength, 0.21, 0.15, and 0.19. So I'm just rewriting my percents as decimals. Okay, now, how many of quarts of each should be used to produce 60 quarts of the 19% solution? So I am looking at this part here, 60 quarts of a 19% solution. This tells me that I have to end up with 60 quarts. So I need to find out how many quarts of each of these, and I don't know either of them, but I know they have to add up to 60. So let's say this is x. I want two things that will add up to 60, and if one of them is x, well, for instance, if x was 10, this 15% solution would be 50. You would have done 60 minus 10 to figure that out. So, but it's not 10, it's x. We don't know what it is, so this should be 60 minus x. Anytime you want two things adding up to 60, if one thing's x, the other is 60 minus x, and you can convince yourself x plus 60 minus x really is 60. All right, now let's talk about the actual salt here. I'm going to call it the pure salt. Sometimes I write the word actual salt. The actual salt in this vat, okay, the pure salt, is 20%, 21% of the whole solution. Okay, so in other words, if you extracted the salt, it would be 0.21 times x. 21% of x means 0.21 times x. The amount of pure salt in the 15% solution is 15% of what's in this vat, and what's in that vat is 60 minus x, so you need to put a parentheses around that. It's 15% of the 60 minus x. And in this final vat, our final solution, we know that we've got 60 quarts and it's going to be 19% salt, so we actually know that. That's an actual number, whatever 0.19 times 60 is. Now we know if we're throwing these two solutions into this big vat, the amount of salt you have from each will be the same as the amount of salt you have at the end. So the amount of salt in this first vat, 0.21x, plus the amount of salt in the second vat, which is 0.15 times 60 minus x, has to actually equal that 0.19 times 60. So this is the equation we use, and now we're down to solving an equation. Now the first thing I like to do is multiply both sides by 100 so I can move these decimal places 2 to the right. And I'm choosing 100 because I need to move it 2 to the right to get a whole number for 21 or 0.21 or 0.15 or 0.19. All of them I would have to multiply by 100. So you pick the one that, the most places you have to do, and you multiply both sides of the equation by that. You do not have to do this. If you want to do the whole problem in decimals and use a calculator, that works as well. But old habits die hard. I'm used to doing things without a calculator most of the time. So 100 times 0.21x, I get 100 times 0.21 is 21, and then I still have times the x. 100 times the next term, I multiply it by the 0.15, which is 15, and I still have to multiply that by 60 minus x. Be careful, do not multiply 100 times the 0.15 and the 60 minus x, because that's multiplying by 100 twice. And when I multiply it by the third, what's on the right-hand side of the equal side, I'm going to be able to move the decimal 2 to the right for 19 and times 60. All right, so now I have to simplify the left-hand side. So I have to do my distributive property right here. So I have 21x plus 15 times 60. Well, 15 times 6 is 90. Get to add a 0. Minus 15 times x. All right, now we have to do 19 times 60. You can get out scratch paper or use a calculator. That's going to be 1140. All right, so on the left-hand side, I have to combine like terms, 21x minus 15x, and at the same time, I'm going to go ahead and subtract 900 from both sides. So 21x minus 15x is 6x, and 1140 minus 900 is 240. So I just need to divide both sides by 6. And x is then 40. Okay, now we have to remember what x stood for. X stood for how much of the 21% solution that I want to use. So here's the x, here's the x, right? So if I'm going to use 40%, if I'm going to use 40 quarts of the 21% solution, the other has to be what? Well, it has to add up to 60. So 40, this will be 20, right? So I'm going to reproduce this picture here on the next page, and we'll put in 40 for x. So here's the original problem again, and we solved the equation and we got x is 40. So we now know that we could put in 40 right here, which means this other amount has to be 20, which of course is the same as 60 minus 40, right? You know that these two solutions have to add up to 60. Now we want to make sure the actual amount of salt in each vat here adds up to the amount of salt over here in the final solution. So we can check that. What is 21% of 40? And what is 15% of 20? And what is really 19% of 60? We want to make sure that these two amounts add up to that amount. So now we're just checking. So we have to do 21% of 40. Now to do these, you can use a calculator or not. It's up to you. This is how I do it. I think of what's 21 times 4, that's 84, but there's a 0, and then because of the 0, then I have to move my decimal in 2 places for the 0.21. So that's 8.4 without a calculator. Here I do 15 times 2, that's 30. I add a 0, and then I move back 2 places because of the 0.15. So I know that I've got 8.4 plus 3, that's 11.4. So this means in these two salt solutions, well, in the first salt solution, I've got 8.4 quarts of pure salt. Okay, so out of those 40 quarts, 8.4 is the pure amount of salt. And of course, that is a lot, but it's 21%. And for the second solution, the 15, it means I really have 3 complete quarts of salt out of that 20 total quarts. And then we have the 0.19 times 60. And let's see, 19 times 6, that's 114 with a 0. And I'd have to move in the 2 places. So, yeah, it does check. I do have the same amount of salt. So that means that I should use 40 quarts of the 21% solution, 20 quarts of the 15% solution, and that will give me this 60 quarts of a 19% solution. So that's all we have to do is write the answer now. So here's our answer. Use 40 quarts of the 21% salt solution. Did I say 40? And 20 quarts of the 15% salt solution. If you want to keep watching, I'm going to solve this, the equation I had before that had all the percents in it without multiplying both sides by 100 to show you if you have a calculator with you and you just want to work everything in decimals, how it works out. So here was the setup of our problem, and let's say you did not want to solve this by getting rid of the decimals first. Then all we need to do is start off by doing the distributive property here. And 0.15 times 60 is 9. Let's say you had a calculator, so you could figure that out that way. And then 0.15 times x is 0.15x. And then we do 0.19 times 60. Let's see, I'm doing that right now, and that's 11.4. And then on the left-hand side, I need to combine the like terms, and I'm also going to go ahead and subtract 9 from both sides. So 0.21 minus 0.15 is 0.06. X equals 2.4. And then you could divide both sides by 0.06. And if you're using your calculator, or if you're doing this by hand, you will still get x equals 40. So there's a way of solving the equation without, multiplying both sides by 100. Please visit my website at yourmathgal.com where you can view all of my videos, which are organized by topic.